This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. Today we're going to sort of dig into a subject that we spoke out in general last week. Today's shiur is dedicated by our good friend Rabbi Robert Zarni in honor of Chodesh Adar and Kol HaKodesh Hazeh. Okay. The Shoneh Halachos brought in Siman Ches, Ois Sivkatan Chaf Aleph. Nachon sheyichaser roishay behatalis mitchilas hatfila ad soifa. It is correct to cover your head with the talis from the beginning of tefillah until the end. Shemevi lidei yirah shamayim. It brings the fear of God. V'harizal hayemachasa hatalis ala tefillin. The Harizal put the talis on top of the tefillin shalosh. But achal kapanim lo yichasa tefillin legamri. It should not completely cover the tefillin. The correct thing is shelo yaser hakoyva hakatan shal rosh beis hatfila av shemechasa rosh behatalis. The correct thing is keep the yarmulke on the head during davening, even though you're covering your head with the talis. Okay, so we're going to talk about the subject of covering one's head with the talis during davening. Because the question is, what does the Mishnah Berurah mean? What does that Arizal mean? Does he mean dafka, the whole prayer, the whole davening, or does he only mean Shmoneh Esrei? So, please take one of each. Take one of each of these papers. We know that if we look around, we see various practices in terms of when people cover their head in a talis. Some only cover their head for Shmoneh Esrei. Some only cover their body and they don't cover their head. Some cover their head for the entire davening. So what is the correct practice? So listen carefully. I want to read to you the lashon of the Torah. The Torah says, "Umechase roishai shelo yehe begiloi haraish." You cover your head so that your head should not be begiloi. So the question is, what does the Torah mean? You should cover your head so that your head is not uncovered. I mean, isn't that obvious? You should cover your head so your head is not uncovered. You can never uncover your head. So the Beis Yosef learns the Torah that what the Torah means is it doesn't mean to say cover your head with the talis so that your head is not begoloi legamri, because it has nothing to do with the mitzvah of tzitzis. And what the guy was walking around until now, begiloi haraish. So what the Torah means, says the Beis Yosef, is even though your head is already covered with the yarmulke, the derech of tzenuim is to put a handkerchief or a talis over their head for tefillah. Says the Beis Yosef, "Lekach kasav yichasa roishay betalisay kedei shelo yehe begiloi roish mesudar oy talis shedarach litein al kisei atachton shabaroish." You should cover your head with the talis so your head is not completely uncovered. What does that mean, uncovered? It is covered. So it's not uncovered from being completely covered. Okay. So what is Beis Yosef saying? That we're talking about someone who's already wearing a yarmulke, and derech tzenuim is to cover your head even further than a yarmulke. Okay? Which might be the basis of Hasidim, who they have a certain hakpada of double covering. It may come from this language of Beis Yosef, that even though your head is covered with a yarmulke, but derech hatznuim is to make an additional cover. Now, that won't explain why they would cover their head for a bracha. This is specifically tefillah. This is specifically tefillah. However, the Ramad disagrees with the Beis Yosef's understanding of the Torah, and he says, no, the Torah means kipshutai. You don't have to wear a yarmulke. Everybody knows a yarmulke is not me'ikar hadin. So it's talking about somebody who was walking around without a yarmulke. It's only midas chasidus to wear a yarmulke. And therefore, the Beis Yosef says, therefore the Torah says, but if you're going to make a bracha on the talis, you have to make sure your head is covered. But there's no idea of a double cover, because wearing a yarmulke is not me'ikar hadin. Now, you should know that for Ashkenazim, Bizman Hazeh, wearing a yarmulke is me'ikar hadin, and it's a dairaisa to wear a yarmulke. Because, and that's something because in the Ashkenazic countries, the Gentiles went out of their way to uncover their head, we have to cover our head. The Taz says it's a Dairaisa. It's for Ashkenazim, not for Sfardim. Me'ikar hadin, without that, there's no halachic requirement, says the Rama. Okay. But comes the Eliyah Rabbah, and the Eliyah Rabbah says, what?
All the time?
Yeah.
And so Moshe doesn't have something on that?
You want to know about work?
Right.
Yeah, there might be a basis for that, if necessary. Okay. Now, the Eliyah Rabbah brings, regarding Atifas Haroish, throughout the whole tefillah, he quotes the Sefer Adi Zahav. These are notes of Maharam di Lunzano on the Levush. Tzarech lechasois roishoy mitchilas hatfila ad soifoi v'loi k'moi k'tzas hanoshim shemavarchen al Talis, and then they throw it behind them, and about them it says va'oisi hishlachta achar gavech, and the Bach says minag hatznuim shelo yehei rega begili haroish kol zman Talis olav. The minag are very modest people, as they keep their head covered with a talis so long as the talis is on them. Now, okay, that's what the Bach says. Comes the Rambam, and the Rambam says, Derech kol hachachamim v'talmideim shelo yispalalu ela k'shehim atufim. The derech of wise men and their students is they don't daven unless they're wrapped up. And it's brought in Shulchan Aruch. Now this is Midas Chasidus. But the Chayyadam says, Yisatif bebegadav kederach shaholech lefnei sar. The Chayyadam codifies the halacha that you should wrap yourself in your garment the way you would appear in front of an important person. So that's what we mentioned, that back in the day, if they would go in front of an important person, they would wear a cloak on top of their shirt, they would wear a jacket on top of their shirt, they would wear a hat. Bizman hazeh, if you want to know what should I wear when I daven, if you have an important business meeting, whatever you'd wear to an important business meeting is what you should wear for davening. Okay, but here's the interesting point I wanted to show you. Now, I have a sefer here from Sefer Imrei Baruch. Imrei Baruch was written by Rabbi Baruch Simon, who is Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Achanan. And I grew up in the same neighborhood where he did, so I would say I'm a friend of his, if I could say that. Maybe a Talmud of his in some ways. He brings from the Sefer Nefesh Harav, that Rav Shechter composed about Rabbi Soloveitchik, that the opinion of Rav Soloveitchik is you need to cover your head by all dvarim shebekdusha. Okay, so technically speaking, does your head have to be covered in a talis? It's midas chasidus, it's midas snuim. It's not halacha, it's pious practice. However, Rav Shechter says from Rav Soloveitchik that for all dvarim shebekdusha you should keep your head covered, because in the Tshuvas Hagaonim it's brought that they argue, are Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim Davar Shebekdusha or not? And they ask, and what's the nafkamina if it's Dvarim Shebekdusha? The nafkamina would be for whether you have to have your head covered in a talis or not. Now, according to this opinion, it would come out that you need to cover your head for Baruch Hu.
How do we not know it's for standing purposes?
Why would you have to cover your head when you're standing?
No, I'm saying the nafkamina. What's the difference between...
Oh, maybe that's another nafkamina. That is another nafkamina. But another nafkamina is whether you have to wrap yourself in a talis. So, but according to this opinion, that you have to wrap your head because it's varm shabekdusha, then when it come out, you have to have your head covered for Baruch Hu. You have to have your head covered for Shemona Esrei, for Kaddish, for Kedusha, for Kriyas HaTorah. Right? Now, most people are not covering their head for Kriyas HaTorah. You see people covering their head for Kriyas. Even people who cover their head for the whole davening, their head is not covered for Kriyas HaTorah. According to this, you'd have to have your head covered for Kaddish at the end of Aleinu. Every time there's a Kaddish, you'd have to cover your head. But that's how Rabbi Soloveitchik understands the din of Atifas Harosh.
But I see that by laning, the one that gets an aliyah, or the one that's the Bakayre,
They cover their
they
head.
cover them.
Shkayach.
So in other words,
But it's a dvarm shabakdusha. I mean, because I'm passive. I mean, we need 10 people for that. So should you not have your head covered according to that? Now, I don't know if they did cover their head. This opinion covered their head. But that's a certain shita, that the din of atifas harosh is for dvarm shabakdusha. I will say, Loi matzinu in any of the achroinim or any of the poskim that that's the din of atifas harosh for tefillah, that it's a din in dvarm shabakdusha. We don't find such a thing. Okay, but this was most interesting to me. I mentioned that in our yeshiva, they cover their head for Baruch. They keep it covered until the end of Shemoneh Esrei, and then it's done. You're done. Then maybe they put it back on for Kedusha, and then maybe they put it back on for Aleinu. By the way, Aleinu is a very important tefillah. Whenever the tzibur says Aleinu, you got to stop, drop, and Aleinu. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, you have to say Aleinu together with the tzibur. If the tzibur says Ashrei, you have to say Ashrei with them. The tzibur says Aleinu, you have to say Aleinu with them. If the tzibur says Shema, you need to say Shema with them. Rabbi Tzion Abba Shol has a major chiddush. You ready for this? You say I should bring the Sephardi halacha. I'm going to bring it. The din that you need to say Shema with the tzibur is why? Because how could it be that tzibur is being makaba Omachu Shemayim and you're not going to be makaba with them? But what if the tzibur is davening at 9 a.m. and when they get up to Kriya Shema, they're not being mekayim any mitzvah in the Torah because after the Zman, they're just saying Shema because Kekayir b'Torah. You don't have to say Shema with them. Now this morning we went faster than we usually went. We usually go. Why? Because the Magen Avram Zman was 8:50. So at least we wanted to start the Shema before the Magen Avram Zman. Okay, now I want to share with you, this is a whopper. Okay, look, you have it on the sheet. Isa b'medrash Rabbah, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Mashal l'melech, sheshalach prosdugma shalai l'medina. A king sends his proclamation to the country. Ma asu b'nei haMedina. So what do the people do? Amdu aragleim, they stand up. Uparu es roishem, they uncover their heads. V'karu, and they read it. Be'ema, uv'yira, bereses, uv'ziyah. Kach amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hada prosdugma shtadidi. Shema is my proclamation. I'm not going to bother you more than a regular king. A regular king, you have to put on a hat to read his proclamation. You don't have to put on a hat to read his proclamation. So I'm not going to bother you. Lo yamarti aleichem shetiyu kohen kriya Shema, lo yoimdim aragleichem. I don't require you to stand by Shema. V'lo poirin es rashechem. I don't require you to uncover your head. A regular king, when he sends a proclamation, the people are required to uncover their heads, and they're required to stand. I don't require you not to stand and not to uncover your heads. You could say Shema however you want. B'shivtecha b'veisecha, v'lechtecha v'aderech, u'v'shachbecha u'v'kumecha. So in the Taz and the Bir Hagra says that from here we see that you don't have to cover your head at the time of Kriya Shema. And that means covering your head is only Midas Chasidus. But we who are minog is to cover our heads throughout, what the Medrash means, it's not needed to cover your head, especially in a talis if you already have a yarmulke. Meaning the Medrash is saying, there's a Gzeras HaKasuv, you don't need Atifas HaRoish for Shema. So Rav Shechter brings that the minhag of the Grach, Reb Chaim Brisker. You heard of Reb Chaim Brisker? If you go home today and your wife says, what did you learn? You say, we learned the real stuff. The Grach. The minhag of Reb Chaim Brisker was he did not cover his head until Baruch Hu. Like a minhag of Chavetz Chaim. He did not cover his head until Baruch Hu. he covered his head with Baruch Hu. And right before he got to Shema, he uncovered his head. The Grach uncovered his head before Shema. And he kept it uncovered until Shemoneh Esrei, and then he covered it again. He was makbid, b'dafka, not to have atifas harosh for Shema, because uvelechta chavaderch implies there are no hakpados how you say Shema.
The opposite now.
Yeah.
When I went to meet a cowboy that had a hat on, instead of being, they said, it's not respectful. People off their hats. They speak to each other.
By the Umais Ha'olam, let's say by the baseball game, they used to have something called a baseball game. And when we were kids, you go to baseball, there were Rosh Hashivas at the baseball game, Nowadays, what's baseball? I don't even know what it is. But by the national anthem, you have to take off your hat. The biggest aver in the world is to keep the hat on. You can't keep a hat on by the national anthem. So by the nations of the world, they dafka take off the hat as a sign of respect, which is why we wear a yarmulke midoraisa, the Taz says. But you see from the Medrash, there seems to be an indication that you don't need ativas harosh specifically for Shema. Hashem doesn't want to bother us for Shema. Which would come out like this. Let's say a person is makbid to wear a hat by davening. Let's say. And they daven before the Zman. Let's say Friday night. Friday night, you all know, you have to repeat Shema when you get home. Yeah, everybody knows that halacha? That Friday night, you daven in a shul, they say the 3 parshas before Tzeis HaKechavim. You got to repeat all 3 parshas at night. Let's say you ordinarily daven with a hat. So should you put your hat on to say the 3 parshas of Shema? According to the Medrash, no. Maybe you could do it. You need to do it for tefillah, but not Shema. Shema has no such requirement of atifas harosh. Okay, this was the minhag of Reb Chaim Brisker. I'll pee the Medrash. Okay, so Rabbi Simon brings from one of his rabbeim, Rav Zvulun Chalap. I think he just passed away. Yeah, he asked on the Grach's minhag to remove the talis at the time of Kriya Shema. He says it's davar tamua. It's true the Medrash says Hashem is not matriach us to be ma'atef harosh during Kriya Shema, but He wasn't matriach us to take it off. It's one thing you want to say, the Medrash says, Hashem is not matriach us to cover our heads in a talis for Kriya Shema, but He also wasn't matriach us to remove it. Reb Chaim would dafka remove it? I mean, it sounds unusual, where Hashem says, you're not required to have a higher level of respect for Shema. Oh, really? Great, I'll remove it right away. Sounds a little bit absurd. So Rav Chalap explains the minhag of the Grach, ba'ofen acher. He says, Gemara Menachos says, Daf Lamed Hiyam Beis Rabbi Yehuda Mishmei the Rav. I wonder, Rabbi Yehuda, we'll get him Menachos. Rabbi Yehuda who? Rabbi Yehuda says, V'chulu Mishmei the Rav. I wonder if it's Rav Mamon. Could you bring a Menachos, please? Lamed He, yeah. It says, Kesher shel tefillin halacha l'moshe misinai. The knot of the tefillin is halacha l'moshe misinai. Rav Nachman v'nehavyan lebar. You should wear it on the outside. V'ro kol ami aretz ki shem Hashem nikra alech v'yar mimecha. Thank you. Lamed He Amavez. Let's see. Amar Rav Yehuda Brei Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei the Rav. Wow. Where else do we have this? You hear that? That's Amar Rav Yehuda Brei Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei the Rav. That kesher shel tefillin is halacha l'moshe misinai. Maybe because since he's Mibnei Banav Shel Haman, and Haman wanted to be Mevatel Tefillin. How do we know? Because it says Vikar Elu Tefillin. So to Masake and Hama trying to mevatel tefillin, he taught a halacha of tefillin. Yeah, you see, ein beis hamedrash bli chidush. Okay. So the question is, he says you should wear it on the outside. Why? Because it says, V'ro kol amei aretz, ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yaro mimeka. Tanya, Rabbi Lezer Gadol Omer, elu tefillin shabaroish. V'hasiroisi es kapi, v'roisi es achoirai, malamed sheher lai HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe, kesher shel tefillin. Says the Mordechai, mikamakom vadai toiv sheyiru midachsiv ro'u. Meaning, the Gemara comes out that you don't have to have the kesher shel tefillin uncovered. Says the Mordechai, it's better to. But umiu ato loy chayshinon lizar mechasen oisai afal pisha ein nachain. You hear the Mordechai? Nowadays we cover the kesher of tefillin, and we're not zahir to have it uncovered. But it's not correct. So what does the Mordechai hold? That it's rohi li zahir loy lechasis is a kesher at tefillin sharosh, because the pasuk v'ro kol amei aretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha is going on the kesher. But for whatever reason, we're not choishish for that. Says Rav Chalab, you could say, maybe we're not choishish for that, b'shas tefillah, or other dvarim shebekadusha, because there's a siba for atifas harosh. Listen carefully. By other parts of davening, where you're supposed to have your head covered, so there's an imperative to have your head covered, so we're not makbid to uncover the kesher shel tefillin. But by Shema, where Hashem is not matriach us to cover our head, Memela, then we shouldn't uncover our head, because there's a hakpada that the kesher shel tefillin should be apparent. Especially in light of the fact that tefillin is very connected to Shema, because kol hakoyrei kriya Shema b'loy tefillin kilu me'ed eda sheker ba'atzmai. So this is another pshat in the grach. It's not the pshat, the Medrash says that Hashem is not matriach us to cover our head for Shema. Okay, so let's quickly uncover it. The pshat is no. There's a specific hakpada to be megala the kesher shel tefillin. Elamai, the rest of davening, there's also a hakpada to cover your head. But by Kriya Shema, where there's no hakpada to cover your head, then we should be makbid to show the tefillin shel reish.
Also in any part of tefillah that's not conditional.
So you're saying maybe the reason why the grach didn't cover his head until Baruch Hu is because since you don't have to, it's better not to. I mean, according to this, it could be that in the yeshivas where they don't, it's not alts kalos, it's a hakpada. They're makbid to be megala the tefillin shorosh. Because hakpada not to wear hat, because you might forget and put it on by davening at a time that the kesher. So even though the yeshiva bachrim they balance it in between the.
When you have a talis over your head, you still see the tefillin.
But you don't see the kesher, right? You don't see the kesher. Yeah, so it'd come out that there's at least a svara. Lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't bring this down. So it's interesting. These are different. Hanhagais. You don't have to wear a talis by benching. You want to know? Should you wear a hat by benching? Technically, Brachas Hamazon is not a davar shebekdusha. Davar shebekdusha is something you need asara for. So benching would not be a davar shebekdusha.
10 people.
It's still not a dvarim shebekdusha. It's still not a dvarim shebekdusha.
So why are you wearing a hat? Because of double cover?
Why does who wear a hat? Why do people wear a hat today?
No, I'm saying.
You want to know for Birchas Hamazon?
Yeah.
The Mishnah Berurah says that you should be mis'atev just like you are for Shemona Esrei. So Birchas Hamazon should be like Oimei Lifnei HaMalach. So it would come out that you probably should put on a jacket because you would wear a jacket for an important business meeting. If you wear a hat for Shemona Esrei, you should wear a hat for benching. But we spoke out last week. Nowadays, it's not really in vogue to go around in a hat. So
then you brought out the point that some do it because of double cover.
okay, so last week I said double covering does not have a real source in halacha. It's more a minhag based on the Beis Yosef that snuim, besides their yarmulke, they cover Yeah, would it be minhag tznuim to have a full covering over your head for Beres Hamazon? It would be minhag tznuim. Could you say it's an absolute halacha? It's hard to make that case with Zman Hazeh.
We also discussed the positioning of the talis on the head with the tefillin on. You're not covering the tefillin.
Okay, so that Reb Chaim said like this, that it should sort of, you don't know about the head covering on the tefillin shorosh?
Yeah.
Should be partially covering it. Partially covering it, partially not covering it.
Midway back of the
Yeah.
shorosh box.
Ideally. Yeah. V'arizal hayemechasa hatalis al hatfilin, ach al kol panim. Here's ideally the tefillin should be out. You don't cover the tefillin. The ari would be mechasa the tefillin, but the Mishnah Berurah says lo yechasa tefillin legamri. Okay. Should I tell you something on Purim? Because it's Adar already.
Wait, where's the source? Where's the source for whatever you do in front of important person? You have to do when you do in front of Hashem. Where does it say that?
For Shemana Esrei?
For anything, benching, whatever.
Specifically, Be'ikar Shemana Esrei. Because Shemana Esrei has a din of Oimed Lefnei HaMelech. Shema does not have a din of Oimed Lefnei HaMelech. Shemana Esrei has a din of Oimed Lefnei HaMelech.
Where's the source for that? That whatever you do in front of a king, that's what you should do in front of Hashem. Is that like a pasuk or something? Like how do we know?
Hikoin Lekras Hashem Alekei Yisrael.
You have to make that connection.
Oimed Lefnei HaMelech.
Hashem's in Melech.
The din of Shemana Esrei is you're standing in front of a king, right? You're standing in front of a king. Where did we have Sar? Who said the lashon of Sar? Where did I read that? Where did I have the lashon of Sar? We read it this morning. In the Chayadam. The Chayadam. Yisatif bebegadav kederech shahoylech lefnei Sar. V'lechein einoi nochen lespal bekapatin, which is a shirt or a shlufrek in pajamas. Shenamar hikoin likras elekecha. V'yasim koiva beroisha kederech shahoylech berochoiv v'loi bekoiva hakatan shetachas hakoiva. Yeah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.